This is Marjorie Taylor Greene on Sean Hannity's show, and let's see a little bit about what the Green ones take on this disaster is, right?
Reaction. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I also, by the way, folks, we can make it a little bit bigger. I apologize in advance to subjecting you to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sorry, I know that we're all better off just, for your mental health at least, you're better off not paying any attention to this fucking moron. But it's important. We need to know what she says because she is basically the face of the conservative movement out there. She's gaining power. This woman is now on committees and such, which means that she has a voice in laws that are going to get passed, and she's trying to jockey herself into a position as the next Republican vice president. If Trump wins, right, she may end up actually being the goddamn vice president. So no, we need to pay attention to her. We need to pay attention to who she is and what she is, and warn people, for the fucking safety of mankind at this point. So anyway, I don't want to put words in her mouth. Let's listen to what she's got to say.
Some people talk about, for example, wind turbines contributing to the death of whales and bird life, etc. In that case, nobody wants to seem to talk about that. And then you have this toxic.
Yeah, that's also BS, by the way, what he's talking about, right? Wind turbines causing the death of whales, that's bullshit. That's not a thing, right? Causing birds getting killed. Yeah, it is true that birds sometimes fly into windmills, but no. Their windmills are not causing like the extinction of bird species, right? This is like BS pseudoscience that the right wing is using in order to try to make renewables look bad. It's total 100% grade A baloney. So anyway, let's continue on with this.
The chemical mess in Ohio, in Palestine, that we reported on earlier in the program, and I don't hear anything from the new Green Deal climate alarmist cult about what is an environmental disaster by every measure. Why?
So, first of all, what the hell is he talking about? What, people are not making a big enough deal about it? I mean, because here's the thing. This is something that, it's a misconception. You see it on Reddit all the time. Why is nobody talking about this? But the truth is people are talking about it. And they were, right after it happened. I mean, it was on the news, right? It was newspapers were making stories about it. And, thanks to social media, thanks to Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and all the other social medias, TikTok and stuff like that, it spread and it got very popular, and now everybody's talking about it. But even back in the first couple of days, it was like, no, it's not like this was buried anywhere. It's not like there wasn't a media blackout or anything. There's a story of a guy that got arrested, a reporter that got arrested, and they were trying to spin that so conspiracy theories got around saying, oh, they're covering it up, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, that's not why the guy got arrested. The guy got arrested because he was live streaming inside of a press conference. And it was like, apparently there was some kind of rule against that. And then they threw him out, and he didn't want to get out or something. Like, it had nothing really to do with, oh, it's some guy that's uncovering the truth or whatever, and they're trying to suppress. No, that's not like that at all. He got in an argument with a cop or something, So it's like, no, it's not. This is not a conspiracy. There's no conspiracy theory going on. It's not being ignored by the climate activists. If anything, the fucking climate activists are the ones that are sounding the alarm about this, right? So I don't know where he gets off saying it. The reason why Sean Hannity is saying this is because it makes it look like, it's being covered up by the government, right? It's a way of basically criticizing Biden, you know, without actually having any actual substance to the criticism, because, once again, conservatives and Republicans don't have an answer to this problem. Their answer is to put all of the power in the hands of the corporation. That's their answer. When it comes to regulations, their answer is to self-regulate, which is bullshit. It's not. Self-regulation is not a thing. It doesn't work, like, ever. So, continuing on.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know why AOC isn't dressed in white and crying for the dead whales that keep washing on the beach from wind farms that are being placed all over the ocean. And people are calling the alarms over how this is not only killing unknown thousands of bird species, but also causing whales to beach themselves.
Which is bullshit, like I just said. That's not true. Maybe that's why AOC isn't making national statements about it, because it's bullshit pseudoscience, right? Whales beach themselves all the time. It's got nothing to do with wind farms. Probably has way more to do with pollution, noise pollution, stuff like that. May more to do with that than it does with, like, having some wind farms. And then, like, the way that windmills kill birds is that birds fly into them. Well, are there, like, thousands of species of birds? Like, so what, are there, like, giant piles of dead birds outside, like, at the bottom of every fucking windmill? Like, no, this is a made-up, like, problem, because there is very little downside to renewables. So conservatives and stuff have made it a culture war issue, that they have to support fossil fuels because they're bought and sold by, oil companies. So they have to make up some BS about why renewables are bad, right? And when it comes to wind farms, they can't find any reason why wind farms are bad. Like, literally the only reason is that they're noisy and they're an eyesore. That's it. There are no downsides to wind, I mean, the only other downside is that, okay, it can't replace 100% of oil. Well, so what? Then you don't rely 100% on wind. You do a combination of renewables. You don't, like, just choose one renewable and then just only use that, right? No one ever fucking says that. So so they had to invent something. They had to come up with some kind of BS lie as to why we shouldn't spend $1 million on wind farms versus $500 million on a nuclear plant or another oil refinery or something, right? They had to come up with some kind of lie as to why the cheap alternative to fossil fuels is no good. And what do they come up with? Well, sometimes birds fly into them. Okay. A bunch of whales beach themselves. Could it have something to do with wind farms? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. It's BS lies, right? And that's the thing you got to remember. These fucking people, they lying to you. Sean Hannity knows this is BS. Like, Marjorie Taylor Greene knows. She might be too dumb to understand. She might get high off her own supply, but Sean Hannity knows it's complete baloney, right? He knows it's a lie. He's telling it to you anyway. You know why? Because he's a goddamn piece of he's scum. That's why. He's scum, and he knows where his bread is buttered, and to him, the money is more important. He sold us all out years and years ago. But anyway, let's continue on here.
At record numbers. But the real problem, Sean, is Pete Buttigieg. He's the Secretary of Transportation, and he's more interested in equity and inclusion in his hiring practices and grant-giving schemes and obviously probably chest feeding or something like that than he is rail safety. And that's where we have real danger in our country.
No, she's got to throw in a little bit of anti-gay stuff there. Oh, chest feeding. Right. Pete Buttigieg is not trans. He would not be chest feeding his child. But she had to throw that in there anyway because, bigotry is how these people make their money. Right. Besides the fact that, She's an anti-trans piece of human garbage. She's got to throw that in there because she's a bigot. That's what she is. She's a bigot and a scumbag. And it's just not good enough just to, criticize the man's job, right? Not just criticize, if he's incompetent, then just say he's incompetent. No, that's not good enough. They have to actually throw in the fact that he's gay. They have to, get that dog whistle in there, right? And here's the thing, right? So, now let's listen to the way that she words this. Okay, let's rewind it just a little bit. Listen to the way that she words her criticism of Pete Buttigieg, right?
Like that, than he is rail safety. And that's where we have real danger in our country. You see, Pete Buttigieg was never qualified for the job. And I believe we need to haul him in our committees and start questioning him over what's actually happening in his department. Because train derailment is happening every single day. And now thousands of people, birds, animals, they're all sick. And we don't know the consequences of this horrible accident in East Palestine.
Okay. Notice what she didn't say there? She said, okay, well, we need to get him up here and answer questions. Okay, that's good, right? Train derailments happen every day. That's true, they do, right? And then she skipped right over to the dead birds and dead animals things, which is true. There's lots of dead birds, dead animals and stuff. But what is it that Pete Buttigieg is not doing? She didn't mention that part. What is it that he's not doing? What is he not doing? What's his job that they want to haul him up that he's responsible for, right? Regulating the rail industry. She didn't mention that part. Why did she not mention that part, right? Because Republicans don't believe in regulations. Because if she were the transportation secretary, she'd be doing the exact same thing that Pete Buttigieg is doing, not enforcing the regulations, right? How would Pete Buttigieg stop accidents like this from happening? How? By requiring companies like Norfolk Southern to follow safety regulations. She's not mentioning that part. She's not mentioning the how. She's not mentioning the why. She's not mentioning the actual policy that will result in less accidents. She's all happy to place the blame. Oh, it's his fault this happened. Why is it his fault this happened? Because he's not doing his job. What is his job? Right? Regulate the rail companies. You notice how they're stepping one step. Instead, she's trying to blame it on the fact that he's gay. She's throwing in little, instead of actually blaming the man's incompetence at his job, she's turning it into a culture war issue, saying, he's wasting too much time chest feeding. Right? He's bad at his job. He's not even there most of the time. The reason why that he was gone when the example that what she's talking about when she says that he wasn't even there for a year, right, is because Pete Buttigieg had a child and he took paternity leave, and then that was right. He was on paternity leave right when all the supply chain issues and shit happened, right? She's criticizing him for that, for taking paternity leave, but not for enforcing the regulations, not for the thing that would actually address these problems, right? Because the way Pete Buttigieg is handling it is the exact same way that a Republican would handle it. It's the exact same way that she would handle it if she were the transportation secretary. It's the exact same way that the transportation secretary, Elaine Chao, under Donald Trump, the exact same way that she handled stuff like this, by doing nothing, by encouraging the companies to regulate themselves, by doing the absolute minimum to interfere with profits when it comes to these industries. Because to them, to the Republicans, and to Democrats like Pete Buttigieg, profits are more important than people. They see government as a way of enriching themselves as a tool to be used to enrich themselves and not as a tool to be used to protect people and to make the marketplace fair, which is what I think the government should be used for. Right? That's what we need to understand. In this aspect, right, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Pete Buttigieg are ideologically aligned. They believe in the exact same things, right? There's really no difference between the two. You know, I say a lot in my other streams that, you know, when people say Republicans and Democrats, there's no difference. No, there is. There is a difference when it comes to social issues, when it comes to things like stochastic terrorism and violence, when it comes to democracy and voting rights. You know, there are massive differences between the two political parties. There are massive differences between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to those things, right? When it comes to, you know, stuff like that, when it even comes to war, for example, and starting them in particulars, there's massive differences between Republicans and Democrats, right? But there is very little difference between the Republican corporate wing and the Democratic corporate wing when it comes to this issue, when it comes to using government regulations, right? Enforcing regulations. Very little difference there. You know, between those two wings. You know, if you were to take the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, there'd be a massive difference. You know, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, right? Ilhan Omar. Those people, massive freaking difference. So just remember that. It's not political party per se that we're talking about. It's ideology, right? There are very much conservative Democrats. There are Democrats which are beholden to corporations, just like the Mitt Romneys out there. Every little bit as much as they are. Those two wings of the party, they're very much the same when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to corporate power, right? And corporate influence in government, they're very much aligned. Marjorie Taylor Greene is right there aligned right with Mitt Romney, right with Mitch McConnell, right with Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden. So that's why she's taking it from the culture war angle. Let's continue a little more.
But we have people like Ilhan Omar. She wants to, you know, crack down on corporate greed when it comes to rails and the privately owned sections of rails. But really what we have to do is we have to make sure that our rails are safe. Democrats.
Yes. Exactly. How do you make sure the rails are safe? Right? By enforcing regulations. See what she just said there? Oh, we have Rashida Tlaib, or Ilhan Omar is what she said. We have Ilhan Omar, who wants to cut down on corporate greed. But we need to make sure our rails are safe. Why are the rails not safe, Marjorie? Why are the rails not safe? Because of corporate greed. Because the corporation makes money by cutting corners, by jamming as many cars on there as they can, by not taking proper safety precautions, by not spending the money to get a modern braking system, by cutting out all of the staff so there's only two guys running an entire like train with like 150 cars on it, right? By lobbying politicians such as yourself, Marjorie, in order to get regulations changed so that chemicals, which are obviously dangerous and carcinogenic, can be categorized as safe so that the car can go faster, by not updating and maintaining railways, like we just saw, dangerous ass railways that are all noodly, right? Bendy and noodly, and then all that stuff. By all of those things, right? That's why it's not safe. Why is all that shit happening? Because of corporate greed. So what's her solution? You know, We need to make sure they're safe. Is she going to say, that's where we just ended. We just ended with her, we need to make sure they're safe. Is she going to say how? You know? Because obviously she doesn't think that corporate greed is the cause of the rails being unsafe. Right? Is she going to say how they're not safe? Let's see.
Democrats passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and only $5 billion went towards rail safety. This is a failure. It would have never happened.
So wait. So she's not going to say. She's not. She just completely ignored how she would make it safe. Obviously, it's not spending money to make it safe, right? Because she just criticized the Build Back Better plan. Build Back Better bill, which actually spent a little bit of money in order to make railways safe. She just criticized that. So her solution does not involve any money, right? What the hell is her solution? She's not going to say. So it's not corporate greed. It's not spending money on it. What's her solution? Does she expect Pete Buttigieg to go out there with a hammer and some spikes and be like John Henry and just rebuild all the railways himself? Is that what she expects? They don't have solutions, folks. Right? She's also wrong here when she says that the Build Back Better took $5 billion. Right? Of course, I can't tell if she means $5 billion is too much or $5 billion is not enough. But actually, it was close to $10 billion. It was about $9.75 billion, right? And I've actually got an article on it right here. I'll put this down in the chat for you guys so that you can check that out later. But anyway, here's the article. We don't really need to read this right now. But long story short, it was roughly about $9.75 billion, right, in grants to improve affordable housing and enhance mobility options for low-income individuals and residents of disadvantaged communities. So this includes things like bus rapid transit and high-speed rail, right? So roughly about that. And then there's another $10 billion for high-speed rail corridor assistance, right? So this is several states have high-speed rail plans. California has one to where they want to build a high-speed rail that goes from San Diego through Los Angeles all the way up to San Francisco, which would be awesome. That is an 8-hour drive, and if I could take a train that did it in 3 hours, that would be the coolest thing ever. Right? So no, a little bit more than what she was claiming, right? But I couldn't tell, like I just said, I couldn't tell, like, does she think that $5 billion is too much? Does she think it's not enough? I mean, it sounds like she's criticizing the fact that we spent $5 billion to upgrade our rail system, right, to make it safe. Well, it's not just going to be safe without spending any money on it. And we know that she doesn't want the railway companies themselves to spend any money, and she doesn't want the government to spend any money. So how are they supposed to be safe if you don't want to spend any money to make them safe? Is she gonna explain that to us? Let's see.
Happened under a Republican-controlled infrastructure bill, and we need to hold Democrats accountable for this, especially Pete Buttigieg. Republican-controlled infrastructure.
All right, this is an important point. Let's rewind this just a little bit more.
A failure. It would have never happened under a Republican-controlled infrastructure bill, and we need to hold Democrats accountable for this, especially.
Okay, never would have happened under a Republican-controlled infrastructure bill. She's right there, because there would not have been a Republican-controlled infrastructure bill. The Republican-controlled infrastructure bill would have consisted of tax cuts. And that is it. That's all it would have been. I know this because during the debates for the Build Back Better bill, the only thing that the Republicans contributed was tax cuts. So the Build Back Better actually resulted in lots of tax cuts for various companies, right? Here's the theory. This is why Republicans do it. They say, okay, if we cut taxes, then the company will have more money, and then they'll turn around and reinvest that in their company. And they'll do things like, build electronic pneumatic braking systems and things like that. This is, of course, bullshit. This does not happen. Every time they cut taxes for giant companies like this, they do not reinvest it in their businesses. What they do is they do stock buybacks, which, lo and behold, Norfolk Southern took its giant tax cut, and that's exactly what they did. Stock buybacks, right? Why do they do that? Okay, why does that's the whole giant flaw with trickle-down economics. This is why trickle-down economics does not work, right? Because here's why, and I'll tell you exactly why, all right? It is a waste of money to reinvest in a business when you get a giant windfall, right? You only expand your business when there's demand, right? That's when you expand your business. If you have demand for your product, let's say you make, let's say you make pillows. Let's say you're the Mike Pillow guy, right? Whatever. Let's say you're that asshole. And you get a tax cut of $10 million. It would be a waste of money for you to just go and hire $10 million worth of people if there's no demand for your pillows. If demand for your pillows increased by a significant amount where you needed more staff, then it makes sense. Then and only then does it make sense. Then you might go take some of your money and go invest in more equipment, more staff, another facility, for example. That's the only time it happens, right? Is when your investment has that's what ROI, return on investment. That's what that means, right? They don't spend any money without calculating all this stuff. It's like, well, how much am I going to get for my money, right? Because if there's no return on investment, because if there's no demand for your product, then hiring a bunch of people, buying a bunch of equipment, stuff like that, upgrading current equipment you have is a waste of money. It's basically just throwing money away down an endless chute. It's gone, right? And, you're better off putting it in the stock market. If you want to make money, it's your money. You want return on your investment when there's no demand. You're better off putting that money in the stock market. And that's what all of these corporations do. That's what these rich people do. When they get, these giant tax cuts, what's the first thing they do with it? They do stock buybacks. Why? Because that's a way of putting it directly into their own pockets. Stock buybacks, you buy your own stock that you've already issued, right? The money from that goes directly back into your pocket. That's what that is. So no, just remember that. She doesn't have solutions. They never have solutions. Republicans do not have solutions. Every Republican solution comes down to cutting taxes so that they can run away with all the money. That's it. That's all it does. This is why every time they cut taxes, you'll see they'll do tax cuts and they'll do stuff like that, and then you still see companies like airline companies and things. They'll still do layoffs even after there'll be a giant tax cut, and United Airlines just got $20 billion from this huge tax cut. 3 months later, United Airlines announces round of laying off 50,000 people. Why are they laying so many fucking people off? If they just got like a giant influx of cash, it seems like they would have the money to be able to pay for those people, right? It's because there's no demand. right? You see it every goddamn time. Every time. It doesn't stop anything. You know what a tax cut may do if your business is on the brink of going out of business? It may allow you to continue on for a few months, but that's it. That's like it doesn't cause economic activity at all. Tax cuts do not spurn economic growth. They do not create jobs. That's complete 100% total bullshit of the highest order, right? You know what actually creates economic activity, which spurns demand? Government spending. That's what actually spurns demand. Keynesian economics, right? Keynesian economics actually work. Every dollar the government spends, it generates like $3 in economic activity out there, right? But that's a secret Republicans will never cop to. Moving on.
Especially Pete Buttigieg.
Where is the money going?
Well, the money's going to the Green New Deal. Over $1 trillion from the infrastructure bill goes to Green New Deal programs. Things
Okay, wait. Let's go on a little more.
like $7 billion to convert buses and ferries to electric batteries. Most of that benefits China because China controls the electric battery in the industry, and America doesn't even compete.
All right, first off, whose fucking fault is that? Okay. She is right that batteries and stuff like that are made in China, Manufacturing in general is in China. So it could have been anything. Any kind of manufacturing is all basically centered in China. So she's true there. Whose fault is that? It is the Republicans' fault, right? Because years and years, right, the Republicans were giving tax breaks and subsidies to oil companies for years. Subsidies are when they directly give money to a company. They give them straight up, there's subsidies, for example, for the nuclear power industry, right? Nuclear power would not be profitable without government subsidies, right? And also the government shielding liability because insurance companies will not insure nuclear power plants. That's the other thing. So, these are ways that, but we need power, and like it or not, nuclear power is required, even as a part of a green power solution. There's gonna be some gap there, and nuclear power is the only thing that we have to fill that gap. Unfortunately, as much as I don't like nuclear power, that's reality. We're gonna have to end up relying on it to some extent. It's bullshit, it sucks, but that's the truth, right? Anyway, so whose fault is that? It's the Republicans' fault. It's the Republicans' fault for not investing in and not spending the right amount of money and giving tax breaks and subsidies to American companies so that they can make batteries here. That big thing about the whatchamacallits, the frickin' superconductors and chips and things like that, computer processors and that kind of thing. Like during the pandemic, well, I guess the pandemic's still going, but at the beginning of the pandemic, we had all the supply chains for like computer like chips and things dried up, and we realized that makes us vulnerable because they're all made in Taiwan. Like the vast majority of computer chips are like made in frickin' Taiwan, right? And this exposed, a big problem that we have, because now it took months and months and months to get the supply chain back up again, and it has to do with the way these things are manufactured. What did Biden do about that? They passed a law that basically gave tax breaks, incentives, and subsidies to American companies to start manufacturing computer chips here, right? That's what they did. And now those things are being manufactured in the United States again, right? That's a way that you can use government, programs in order to sort of direct your economy in order to shield it from things like, shocks. So the next time that we have to we have to shut everything down because we get another pandemic for whatever, or something like that. Not only pandemic, but, a disaster of some kind. Next time a disaster comes around that interrupts the supply chain, it'll be much faster to get it back up, and we won't have to wait 2 years to get a PlayStation 5 next time, right? Because we'll have computer chips here, right? That was an essential industry that they realized, hey, we need these things, not just for our, for commercial products, but also for military products, things like that. We need these things, and they use the government in order to direct that, so that way they're made here, right? We could have done that with batteries. We didn't do that with batteries, right? I remember reading about this during the Bush administration. They knew this was coming. That's the thing. They knew that this thing with electric cars, it was only a matter of time. I remember reading about it. They said within 20 years, electric cars are going to be a major player on the market, right? They weren't wrong, Remember the first electric car only came out in 2006? Something like that. The first commercially available electric car came out around then, What were they called? The EV1 or whatever? Right around then, right? They knew that was a thing that was coming, and there were calls to say, hey, the government should subsidize these things. The government should give tax breaks, for American companies to make batteries and parts and things, and we didn't do it. We didn't do it. There is such a good thing as, tax breaks can be used as a tool to get what you want. You say, hey, you build a plant here and you manufacture this thing that we need, we'll give you a tax break. That can actually be a good thing, because you're getting something for it, versus the usual conservative way they use tax breaks is just to give them out and not get anything in return. It's like, no. Giving a tax break is perfectly fine if you're actually getting something worth it. If they're going to bake you get them to build a power plant here, you get them to hire a certain number of people here, you get a tax break. You get them to, do something like, okay, well, we're going to pollute less. You get this tax break. That's what tax breaks are good. They're just another tool in the shed. It's the way that the conservatives use them, which is bad, right? They didn't do that. So, yeah. Whose fucking fault is that, Marjorie? Right? It's the Republicans' fault. Number one, right? Number two, so what did she say? Besides the hang on, let's rewind it just a little bit, because she said something else here that I want to comment on. So let's rewind about 10 seconds here.
Most of that benefits China, because China controls the electric battery in the industry, and America doesn't even compete.
All right, rewind that just a little bit more here. Sorry.
Because China controls the electric battery, buses and ferries to electric battery deal programs. Things like $7 billion to convert buses and ferries to electric batteries. Most of that benefits China, because China controls the electric battery in the industry in America.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to comment on there, so she said, okay, $7 billion to convert buses over to electricity, right? And that benefits China. Well, what's wrong with having electric buses and ferries, right? See, it wasn't that long ago, a couple of months, right? Wasn't it? Didn't it seem like last summer when the conservatives were losing their minds over the price of gas? Weren't they? Weren't they going crazy over how much gasoline cost? And oh, this is all Biden's fault, and it's Pete Buttigieg's fault, and all this other shit. You know? So, what are we supposed to do? What's her solution? Right? Well, one solution to the gasoline crisis, which is, this was not the first time there was a gasoline crisis, by the way. You know? I mean, that shit's been happening since the 70s. Right? But one solution to the, you know, continuous shocks to the economy that shortages of oil, the price of oil, can create is to stop using oil. You know? I mean, my wife, you know, has an electric car. And so while gas is $6 a gallon in California, I mean, now it's gone down to around $4 a gallon. But while I'm filling up my car and shit, paying $48 and stuff to get like 8 gallons, it was a joke, she's cruising around not having to spend nothing. I mean, we pay, you know, you pay for it at your electric bill, but electricity is like, you know, 8 cents a kilowatt hour or something where I live, you know, sometimes even less. Usually it's around 5 cents a kilowatt hour. It's like nothing. So you're spending like $1.35 to charge the car up versus $40 for my car. Of course, I work from home now, so I only really need to fill my gas tank once every 2.5 months anyway. Because, you know, you'd be surprised about how much money you save by not commuting. Oh my god, it's so awesome. You know, like I spend so little on gasoline now, you know, which is great because it's still like $4.50 a gallon around where I live. It's a joke, you know. So what's so bad about, you know, kind of sounds like that's a viable solution to me. But she's criticizing that, you know, because she's a Republican. Republicans are in bed with the oil companies. So what the hell is her solution, right? Gas is too expensive. Okay, let's not use gas. No, we must use gasoline. Well, what the fuck do you want to do? You notice they don't have it. She doesn't have a solution. All they do is criticize, right? They don't have solutions. Okay. You know, it's getting a little late. I think we're going to have to end this. There's another 3 or so minutes where she starts getting into, let's go ahead and turn this shit off. Go fuck yourself, Marjorie Taylor Greene. All right. There's another 3 minutes or so where she starts bullshitting about, you know, about this is all Biden's fault, blah, blah, blah. You know, makes more anti-gay slurs against Pete Buttigieg or whatever. So it's just something to keep in mind. There's something else I was going to look at, but not going to tonight because it's a little late. Maybe we'll do it in a different stream where Charlie Kirk blamed the train derailment on the war on white people. It's just laughably idiotic, right? Like, even when, you know, and this is something you got to keep in mind. You know, okay, Democrats are bad. Democrats are bad. They are incompetent. They barely do their jobs, right? They seemingly are presiding over a country that's falling apart, right? Republicans are 10 times worse when it comes to this, right? When it comes to safety and regulations, 10 times, if not 100 times worse, right? She focused on the culture war aspect of it, right? Because she doesn't have solutions. Charlie Kirk came out and said that, you know, this train derailment is part of the war on white people, right? He made up a bullshit, like, you know, conspiracy theory about this because he doesn't actually have solutions, right? We know what the solution is. The solution is regulate tougher regulations and enforce the regulations, right? They don't like that because that involves raising taxes. That involves the government actually like doing its job. And conservatives and Republicans want there to be a dysfunctional government. Okay. That's part of the plan. The fact that government doesn't work is something that they want it to be like that. Because then they can justify cutting taxes. It all comes back to cutting taxes for these fucking people, right? That's why they don't have solutions. That's why they'll never have solutions. And that's why nothing ever gets solved when Republicans are in charge. Donald Trump took over in 2017. Right at the height of the opioid crisis. That was 2017, right? Millions and millions of people ODing, even today, but all through the Trump years. Millions and millions of people, overdosing, right? Every year on fentanyl, right? On other synthetic opioids that drug companies got them addicted to, right? You know who Donald Trump put in charge of the opioid crisis? Kellyanne Conway. Right? So when Marjorie Taylor Greene sits there and goes, yeah, this Pete Buttigieg was incompetent. He never should have had anything close to this, right? She's, of course, correct. But look at what the shit that the Republicans have on the shelf. Look at who they're bringing to the table. Kellyanne Conway in charge of the opioid crisis. Is it any wonder that nothing got done? Right? Was there any type of solution to the opioid crisis? Did they do anything? Anything at all? Can you remember anything that this woman did to help people? Did you spread awareness about it? Right? Did you get more law enforcement for it? Did you get any laws passed? Did you change any policies? Did you try to do some drug rehab? Anything? No. They're not interested in governing. They're there to make money. They treat government as just another tool to personally enrich themselves. That's what Donald Trump was there for. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is there for. Right? That's what everyone, all the pundits, that's what Sean Hannity is there for. That's what, Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, it's all about personally enriching themselves. They're not there to tell you the truth. They're not there to report the news. They're not there because they're passionate about one cause or another. They don't give a shit about any of that. If they can make more money commenting from a liberal perspective, they would. They do not care. Right? Am I saying Democrats are better? Am I saying liberals are better? Yes. Yes, I am. Not by much, but yes. They are definitely demonstrably better in every way that fucking counts.